Climatologists recently made a forecast for the coming winter, and what came out of it really makes you think about what's actually happening. All the climate models started comparing various weather anomalies in different countries over the past month, and the situation that emerged is very unpleasant. By mid-November, Storm Claudio suddenly struck Europe. Heavy rains, flooding in the United Kingdom and Ireland, flooding in Spain and Portugal. Some data even shows that Europe is facing one of the harshest winters in recent decades. The polar vortex over the Arctic is weakening. In 2018, a similar situation caused record frosts that paralyzed half the continent. And across the ocean, people are already sounding the alarm. In the United States, the first cold wave hit 18 million people. In Florida, where it's usually plus 25 degrees Celsius, thermometers showed minus 2 degrees Celsius. A new absolute record for November. And Russia isn't staying on the sidelines. On November 18th in Moscow, authorities broke a temperature record that stood for 85 years, plus 10 degrees Celsius in mid-November, when by all standards, snow should be on the ground. In St. Petersburg, the first 10 days of November became the warmest in the entire history of meteorological observations since 1881. And at the same time, in Yakutia, it's minus 44 degrees Celsius. In northern Siberia, it's 10 degrees below normal. In Salikard, the temperature dropped below minus 30 degrees Celsius for the first time this season. Anomalous warmth in the center, anomalous cold in the east, storms in Europe, record frosts in America. And all of this simultaneously on the threshold of winter. Things are busy in Asia too. Over the past few weeks, 2 typhoons hit the Philippines in succession. Authorities evacuated 1.5 million people. Record rainfall flooded cities in Vietnam. All of this makes us ask a couple of important questions. What awaits us this winter? Anomalous frosts or warm slush with hurricanes and floods? Snow drifts or rain in January? Why do some scientists promise the coldest winter in 250 years, while others say there won't be anomalous frosts for another 100 years? And what atmospheric process has already started over the Arctic? And why could it dump Arctic cold on us in the very near future? In early October 2025, the head of Gazprom company stepped up to the microphone at an international gas forum. What he said in the next few minutes made everyone who follows weather and energy prices shudder. Alexei Miller stated directly, "Winter 2026 could be the coldest in the past 20 years." He clarified that their company tracks weather maps every day, analyzing deviations from the climate norm. In their opinion, there's a cycle. Once every 10 years a cold winter happens, and once every 20 years an abnormally cold one. And this 20-year cycle might repeat itself right now. Yes, it sounds scary. Minus 25 degrees Celsius from Murmansk to Krasnodar and Europe across the entire European part of the continent. Yes, this is probably the worst-case scenario. But here's what's interesting. Literally a few days after this statement, academician Vladimir Klemenko spoke out and said exactly the opposite. In his opinion, there won't be harsh winters for another 100 years. You heard that right. The scientist assures that, for example, in Moscow, we will never again in our lives see prolonged minus 30 degrees Celsius cold. 2 completely different forecasts. Who's actually right? Meanwhile, weather forecasters from the Severe Weather Europe project are adding fuel to the fire. They're actually claiming that the coming winter could break cold records for the past 250 years. Snowstorms, minus 40 degrees Celsius frosts, ice drifts. All of this, in their opinion, awaits us in just a few weeks. Meteorologist Mikhail Semenov supports this forecast. He talks about a sharp intensification of cold air circulation from the Arctic. But there's one factor that makes even skeptics think. In early November 2025, scientists recorded something that usually doesn't happen until midwinter: early stratospheric warming over the North Pole. This is a complex process, but I'll explain it in simple terms. Over the Arctic exists what's called the polar vortex. This is a gigantic belt of cold air that rotates around the pole. As long as the vortex is stable, it keeps Arctic cold locked up. Europe and Russia during this time enjoy relatively mild weather. But once the vortex weakens, the cold breaks free. It literally flows southward, causing frosts, blizzards, and prolonged snowfalls. So, early stratospheric warming is a sign that the vortex is starting to weaken. And when this happens in autumn rather than in January or February, it's a very alarming signal. Exactly this scenario in 2010 led to all of Europe ending up under snow cover. And in 2018, a similar phenomenon caused record frosts that paralyzed half the continent. And now, in November 2025, history is repeating itself. Models show weakening of the polar vortex. Meteorologists from Weather Balkans state directly, Europe could get a true Arctic winter. To understand what awaits us this winter, we need to look at the bigger picture. Let's start with the ocean. The World Meteorological Organization officially confirmed that 2024 became the warmest year in observational history. The world's oceans accumulated a record amount of heat. A warm ocean means more evaporation, more moisture in the atmosphere, and therefore more powerful storms, more intense rainfall, and more destructive hurricanes. Over the past month, the world has already experienced a whole series of major natural disasters. 2 tropical cyclones struck the Philippines in succession. In the Caribbean basin, Hurricane Melissa swept through Jamaica, Cuba, and Haiti. In Vietnam, record rainfall flooded entire cities. In Europe, a storm caused flooding in the United Kingdom and Ireland, and all of this in 1 month. There's one global factor that's especially important for the upcoming season. La Niña is a cooling of surface waters in the tropical Pacific Ocean. In fact, this phenomenon affects weather around the world. Fresh observations show La Niña is returning. It's already forming, and, according to forecasts, will persist all winter. And history shows that winters under La Niña's influence are usually colder. In North America, especially in Canada and in the eastern United States, temperatures fall below normal, and the probability of heavy snowfall increases. For Europe and Russia, the picture is more complex. La Niña usually activates the Atlantic jet stream. This means a stormy, mild, and wet start to winter for Western Europe. But as the season progresses, La Niña begins interacting with other factors. What's called blocking forms over Greenland. Warm Atlantic currents stop, and Arctic air from Siberia begins penetrating westward. The result is a 2-phase winter. First phase, Atlantic dominance in December. Storms, rain, and relative warmth. Second phase, continental cold dominance in January and especially in February, frosts, snowfalls, prolonged cold. But there's another factor that makes the situation in Russia special. This country is heating 2.5 times faster than the rest of the world. Geography has played a cruel trick on it. 2/3 of Russia's territory lies in polar latitudes, where climate change is felt most acutely. Plus, a huge part of the country is land, which warms faster than the ocean. The result is a chain reaction: droughts, hurricanes, tornadoes that didn't exist before, and forest fires already regularly strike Russia. The head of the Meteo Forecast Center, Alexander Shuvalov, warns, the number of extreme weather events will only increase. Climatologist Alexei Kokorin from the Nature and People Foundation gives an even more alarming forecast. According to his estimates, warm winters will become 2 to 3 times more frequent compared to the previous 30 years. Every year of the past decade ranks in the top 10 warmest in observational history. This means the climate system is becoming more unstable, fluctuations are intensifying, anomalies are becoming more frequent. The warm ocean gives more energy to the atmosphere. This energy has to go somewhere. It manifests in more powerful storms, sharper temperature swings, more intense precipitation. Winter can start abnormally warm and end abnormally cold, or vice versa. Predictability decreases. And here we come to the key point. The coming winter isn't just a change of seasons, it's a trial. Because the main threat this winter isn't frost itself, The main threat is instability, sharp fluctuations, thaws that give way to freezes. Emergency situations specialist Sergei Morozov names the most dangerous scenario: freezing rain. In 2010, it left entire regions without power. This winter, freezing rain is quite possible, especially in February, when precipitation will be twice the normal amount, and temperature will jump from plus 3 degrees Celsius during the day to minus 15 degrees Celsius at night. Thaws lead to ice and other negative consequences. In general, there will be many dangers. Let's break down the coming winter month by month. December. According to weather forecasters' predictions, the first winter month will start relatively mildly. Temperature will be approximately 2 degrees Celsius above the climate norm. But don't rejoice too soon. This mildness is deceptive. Snow will fall, but due to thaws, it won't stick. Wet snow and rain will create ideal conditions for ice. January. This is where things get really interesting. The monthly average temperature will be approximately 3 degrees Celsius above normal. It would seem warm, but this is the average temperature, and in reality, we're in for a roller coaster. Frequent thaws will alternate with freezes. According to experts, frosts down to minus 20 degrees Celsius are guaranteed. They've become rare in recent years, but this winter they'll return. At the same time, thaws aren't going anywhere either. And also in January, that very atmospheric event is possible. Sudden stratospheric warming. The temperature gradient will change. Blocking highs over Greenland and Scandinavia will lock in place. The result could be a historically cold February. In general, February promises to be the peak of weather chaos. Precipitation is expected to be twice the norm. This is a lot. At the same time, temperature will exceed average indicators by 4 degrees Celsius. But again, this is the average temperature. Real fluctuations will be more extreme. In central and western Canada, in the northern and eastern states of the United States, temperature will be noticeably below usual. In eastern Canada and throughout the northern part of the United States, the probability of heavy snowfall sharply increases. Analog analysis shows formation of a stable cold anomaly over western and central Canada, with cold advancing into the northern and eastern states. Snow potential is especially high where cold combines with available moisture. This is primarily the northeast and central regions of the United States, western and central Canada. Deep snowfalls can paralyze transportation and create serious problems for infrastructure. And there's another alarming factor. Early and extensive snow cover in Siberia, and it already exceeds the norm, is capable of triggering a chain of processes leading to weakening of the polar vortex. If the vortex weakens or breaks down, Arctic cold will pour southward, and then frosts will arrive simultaneously in both Europe and North America. Sometimes the polar vortex splits in two, and then both continents get hit with full force. So, the United States and Canada are in the same boat with us. The winter of 2025 to 2026 promises to be harsh on both sides of the Atlantic. But there's good news too. Spring next year could arrive earlier than usual. With a high degree of probability, the end of winter and beginning of spring will be warm. The March forecast shows a significant positive temperature anomaly across most of Europe and Russia. That is, winter will be relatively short. And here we come to a very important topic: gas. After the reduction in Russian gas supplies, Europe has already survived 2 winters relatively successfully. Now the European Union is preparing to completely abandon Russian gas starting in January 2026. But according to various experts, Europe has problems with winter preparation. In the case of severe or prolonged frosts, insufficient gas volume in underground storage facilities could threaten consumers. According to data at the end of October, European storage facilities were filled to 83%. A year ago at the same time, they were filled to 95%. The difference is substantial. But European analysts aren't panicking. They say the fill level remains adequate based on average winter temperature forecasts. The key word is average. But what if winter turns out not to be average, but abnormally cold and unstable? For their part, climatologists have already warned about anomalies in advance. For example, researchers recently recorded very unusual optical atmospheric phenomena. Back in December 2024 in Siberia, at high latitudes in Russia, scientists first noticed noctilucent clouds similar to those usually observed in summer. These clouds appeared after stratospheric heat surge events, and their presence may be connected to temperature anomalies at altitude and structural reorganization in the upper layers of the atmosphere. Scientists believe this is evidence of intensification and interaction between processes in the stratosphere and mesosphere, which could influence global climate patterns. An unusual signal was also the recent publication about the influence of winter storms on gamma radiation. Researchers working at a high-altitude station registered a sharp increase in natural gamma radiation levels during strong electrically charged blizzards. These results challenge traditional ideas about the spectrum of radiation associated with atmospheric activity and indicate that in winter, extreme weather conditions can produce new weather phenomena that are still insufficiently studied. Overall, last winter showed that climate deviations are already becoming not just rare anomalies, but part of a new norm. Episodes of cold waves, increased snowfall in individual regions, accelerated glacier melting, and unexpected atmospheric phenomena emphasize that atmospheric circulation systems are undergoing deep restructuring. And one more important point: even if the average temperature stays within the norm, this doesn't rule out extreme episodes, brief but powerful. A cold wave can arrive suddenly and last several days. This is enough to create serious problems for people's lives, especially if infrastructure isn't ready. And it, judging by everything, isn't very ready. After several warm winters, many have relaxed, equipment has become outdated, repair supplies haven't been replenished. What seemed impossible yesterday could become reality tomorrow. Weather is becoming increasingly unpredictable. Follow new forecasts on our channel. They're updated frequently. As soon as new data appears from experts, we'll share it with you immediately. So subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos.